Behind me, in these waters, is one of the most invasive species in Canada, where after establishment is almost impossible to eradicate.
Oh yeah!
Alright everybody, so what exactly is this species? Well, it's a little guy called the rusty crayfish, or Orconectus rusticus. These little guys are native to the Ohio River Basin. First introduced to Canada in the 1960s through the Quarter Lakes region. Maybe you've heard of the ice cream before. These crayfish are said to have been introduced from fishermen who were using them as bait. And then they took out all the unwanted bait, dumped it back into the river. And we also had people who wanted to keep them as pets, and they were shipped across water bodies for scientific trade purposes. Rusty crayfish are pretty adaptable to their environment. Specifically, they like to stay in highly oxygenated waters with places like logs, dirt, sand, gravel, all that stuff like debris where they can hide and scurry into. Some of the locations that you can find them in include much of South Central and Southeastern Ontario, including Manitoulin Island, the Magnatuan River, the Quarter Lakes Basin, and the Ottawa River Basin, and in Northwestern Ontario. Alright, so what exactly makes this species so invasive? I mean, Ohio's not even that far away from us. Well, these rusties are both bigger and hungrier than our native species, and they can also eat them. It was said in a study that native crayfish populations can drop by as much as 80%. They also eat twice as much and can lay up to 200 eggs at a time. And on top of this, the aggressive nature of rusty crayfish means that it's less likely for our fish to eat them. And they also eat their eggs. And to make matters worse, they feed on the vegetation of the spawning grounds for fish. So if you think about it, with less smaller fish, we get less bigger fish to eat those smaller fish, which means that we have animals higher trophic levels, which will get hungry and die. And guess what? A study was done in 8 different spawning grounds for lake trout in Lake Ontario to see what the effect crayfish, the rusty crayfish, and also sculpins would have. And it turns out that 5 out of those 8 places had ended up with insufficient amount of eggs to successfully reproduce the species. Crayfish are estimated to be able to eat up to 65 eggs per square meter over the course of a month. So, what's being done to mitigate the effects of rusty crayfish? Is there anything we can do? Well, according to Ontario, there is no practical way to remove rusty crayfish once they spawn. Once you place even 1 or 2 of these crayfish, they're gonna repopulate like crazy. And first of all, it's illegal to transport these types of crayfish over land. And you're only allowed to carry a certain amount of crayfish with you when you go and use them as bait. And also, while you're using them as bait, you're not allowed to use them in a place other than the place where you found them. Boats have to be washed, dried, inspected before they can be put into another water body. There are also lots of organizations that are trying to control rusty crayfish populations by stuff such as using minnow traps or using chemicals like chlorine or gases like carbon dioxide to drive them out of the water. But other than this, what can you do? What can you as the viewer do? Well, look, everyone plays a part in this battle against the rusty crayfish. I say this because even like one person who just accidentally doesn't know what he's doing and puts 1 crayfish into the water, game over. However, it can be difficult to know who is who. So I'm going to teach you that. The most obvious way is to tell by the rusty patches on the side of the crayfish. And also the green tint on their body, which is of course a little larger than our native species. But you'll also notice that rusty crayfish have these little black bands at the tips of their claws. And the rostrum is also pinched. And lastly, when they close their claws, it forms an oval-like shape inside. So anyways, if you see these guys out in the wild, make sure you report them and take a picture to your invasive species hotline. And also, rusty crayfish taste pretty good. Just saying. Alright everybody, here is our food web, and I know it's a little bit complicated, but anyways, we'll start breaking it down. So first and foremost, we got the sun. This is the source of all energy and life on earth. Then we move on to our producers, so aquatic plants and algae as well as plants. Next up, we got the secondary consumers. We got the native crayfish, rusty crayfish, as well as the minnows. Then we got the tertiary consumers for this food web specifically. So we have the rainbow trout, pickerel, pike, bass, perch, much more. And from here, we go to our quaternary consumers, so the heron, ball, eagle, osprey, and then we end off with our little human being who can also eat all these guys here.